openings are important.
And when it comes to video games, they can be ever more important. This isn't just your run-of-the-mill movie, this isn't a 2-hour investment, this is upwards of 10 to 100 hours of playtime. These games need to make an impression, because if your attention isn't fully gripped at the starting line, then you've got no hopes of keeping players going for so long. And with advantages in technology, the abilities of cutscenes has only gotten more and more creative. We've gone from no cutscenes from the arcade era to simplistic storybook style to the ever-improving visuals of full-on cinematography. So I figured let's have a scroll through some of Nintendo's greatest games to see which truly gave us the best opening sequences. What truly surprised me for this number 10 slot was the use of sound design intertwined with every action in Kirby Return to Dreamland's opening sequence. Kirby isn't particularly known for its outstanding openings. If anything, I'd argue they're quite often formulaic, but this one seems to go that little bit ahead. From the ship pieces falling off with a little piano note each, to the building drums as the heroes rush to the crash site, to the technological beeping when discovering the ship itself. There's no dialogue in the scene, since it's just a Kirby game, but you can just about hear what everybody's saying and how they'd sound. The music does it all. Maybe a little too much. I mean, you can even hear the blinks in this cutscene. It's like Kirby inhaled Chibi Robo just moments prior. And the cutscene only gets more investing as it continues, as it turns to be progressively more triumphant and motivational as Kirby and crew rush out to the rescue. Mwah! What a wonderful, wholesome start. Very Kirby indeed. Number 9 keeps things fairly simple, yet achieve the goal tremendously well. It's Luigi's first time in a standalone game. Luigi being alone has never happened before, and it's off-putting. Mario is nowhere to be seen, and it shows. This world isn't joyous and colourful. The crows watch Luigi eagerly, and Luigi isn't the fearless hero his brother is. He walks slowly, clearly terrified, and what better way to show this than by literally putting you in his shoes, chucking you directly into his perspective, having to face this giant, ominous mansion yourself. The angles are off, the motion slow and suspenseful, and it all combines together fantastically, thanks to Luigi's Mansion's overwhelming Now, throwing in a first-person view isn't new, nor does it tick all the boxes make a cutscene particularly great. But here it's how it works with its genre and collaborates with the rest of the elements in the scene to truly give a powerful and intimidating opening to this creepy game. Number 8's a double barrel slot between Starfox Assault and Metroid Other M, but hear me out. I'm aware that these games aren't exactly the fan favourites of their franchises, but what they do really well in their opening cutscenes is pay homage to their iconic moments of the past. With Metroid Other M, it's retelling the events of destroying Mother Brain on planet Zebes thanks to the baby Metroid sacrifice, and though I haven't been looking at these cutscenes in regards to visual quality, this is a fantastically looking rendition to be gifted with. And though Samus has a strong obsession with
the baby, the power the baby gave me.
These first few minutes are a great love letter for Metroid fans, regardless of the overdramatic take. And as for Starfox Assault, it starts out like your classic Star Fox story. It's a battle in the middle of space, the gang rock up, they say their lines of confidence, get a little briefing, which admittedly isn't too interesting, and then it begins. We get that classic running through the hallway moment. Each character gets their flair for entering the R-Wings, and then they burst into action. It's not too much going on, but to me it just does a good job of showing off the best little moments that Star Fox fans can enjoy for the opening leap. Next up is Fire Emblem Awakening's opening. Again, going into the first person perspective, which I swear is just a coincidence and not a biased thing, as we witness a battle alongside Chrom. It's your standard action affair with moments of losing before being saved and eventually defeating evil, blah blah blah. But what works so well is the twist ending to the opening, whereby we see the protagonist taken out by a last minute attack and surviving, only to have them unwillingly stab and kill Chrom. It's the first person element here that really brings that home, because it is the camera angle where you'd least be likely to anticipate the betrayal. Seeing that you yourself are the one committing the evil is just a great subversion you probably didn't see coming. And if that action alone wasn't one to invest you, then the next moment of seeing Chrom alive and breathing, since it was all a dream from a nap, makes it all the more interesting. If it's prophecy, then how will all this turn out? Knowing something that the other characters don't only adds to make you want to explore more into the story that's about to unfold. Our number 7 slot goes to Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. Well, I know it's recent and everyone and their mother gushes about this cutscene, but it is a good opener. Look, I probably don't need to go into details about why this sequence works so well. It completes its quota on a fantastic scale, it has great fan service with its character representation on screen, the action is powerful and somewhat displays fairly well the abilities or personalities of the characters. The premise surprises the audience and plays with the emotions of seeing our favourite characters violently die, and then it implants us with a glimmer of hope and then drives it on home again. It has your cheesy backing track, you're invested in what happens next, you feel for the character that remains, and you get all hyped up to hell wanting to play the game yourself. It's just immaculate. What more can I say? Number 5 on our list is Super Mario 3D World, going for more of that quality over quantity. There's actually not a lot of action going on here. The cutscene starts off with your standard Mario in the night sky, with Mario even sneaking in there. Man, I love those subtle voice lines. Suddenly the gang find a crooked glass pipe, and what better way to handle your iconic IPs than by giving them a retro homage to their old jobs by having Mario and Luigi literally sort out the plumbing of the pipes. What a great throwback! Add onto that a jolly little tune and it really wraps up the style of the entire game as this big fun circusy event. Then we see the actual plot begin as the gang are requested to help against Bowser's newest plan. Bowser himself makes an appearance next and is looking pretty good for himself, I must say, before running off with his riches. And what's cool here is more changes to the Mario approach, as Peach is the one to leap into action first, and the others run in after her. Not to mention, all the accompanying music alongside it is truly amazing. We see the brief world the four are embarking towards before being thrust right into this new land. Simple, fun, and a fresh new approach to the Mario characters without being too over the top. Good stuff, game. While I make the fun little trek home, can I ask a favour? So I've signed up for an online competition with my sketch group, the Biscuit Barrel. Basically, it's about making a comedy web series over the next couple of months, and the current number 1 spot has a few fans, but I think hitting number 1 shouldn't be too hard of a challenge for us. So could you support us by hopping onto the website, signing up and following the show? You'll get an email notification for when we upload and any other social media updates we have for the project from now on. It's more content for you, some classic comedy, and if we make a name for ourselves, then we get some serious BBC connections, which is pretty amazing. We've got a trailer up now, but do please sign up and follow to get your presence truly felt. This could potentially be life-changing. Not a bad start to 2019, I must say. Link can be found down below. Thank you guys. Donkey Kong Country Returns is the first in the list, surprisingly enough, to use something that seems oddly rare in many video game openings, and that's comedy. The plot of this sequence is somewhat serious. A new species has come over to take over the island and is doing so by hypnotizing the wildlife of the island and making them do their bidding, i.e. deliver all the bananas on the island to their higher-ups. We get some nice little visual gags to speed up the action, but generally it all seems pretty standard up to this point. The part that works so well here is that throughout this whole endeavour, we don't actually see our heroes until the pandemic finally reaches them. And since we've seen how this process goes up to this point, we have an expectation for how things should go. So when Donkey Kong is finally exposed to the hypnosis himself, you'd think it'd be over since he couldn't avoid it. But in actual fact, he's just too damn stupid to be hypnotized. Add on to the fact this brief look at the player and just Donkey Kong's face throughout the whole thing, and I just can't not have a giant smile on my face watching this. This somewhat serious event is immediately just tarnished in such a great way, and I love the comedic timing of it all. It truly hypes you up to now get your revenge on them all, and feeling oh so powerful as you do so. Now I've been saying opening cutscenes, but perhaps I should have just been saying openings throughout this video, because this next one truly takes advantage of its opening. Spanning 6.5 minutes, the opening to The Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword features multiple different styles and exposition before actually giving the player full controls over Link. Now it starts off with your standard Zelda storybook-esque opening. You've got some interesting visuals of the past and a nice dramatic orchestra, nothing too new here, so we'll skip over that bit, because it then transitions over to the actual world Skyward Sword takes place in. First with the peaceful sky and more text, and then to the dark alternative with this demonic creature. We hop back into the sky with this wonderfully happy orchestral backing as we see the characters of this world hopping onto their loft wings, and capping it off with Princess Zelda of this incarnation, briefly singing her song elegantly. She passes on her letter and looks around whimsically. Hop over to Link in the void, facing the monster, guided by a disjointed voice. We get a funny transition into the real world again, and this funny yet kind of relatable moment of Link out of bed being spat on with a letter. If you can call that relatable at least. Cue Zelda's words, and then we're into gameplay. Now, to be fair, that was a lot to digest, and now that I've described it all out, it sounds like a bit of a mess, honestly, even when skipping the 25th anniversary logo that was slapped into the middle of it all. But what I like about this opening is just how well it wraps up all of the feel and spirit of Skyward Sword. The storybook is your classic Zelda trope, the sky and the monster, the light and darkness. The world and orchestra bring together the real wholesome sense of peace and happiness that always gives me a genuine smile on my face. And then Zelda herself singing and being herself is just so nice to open you up to the game. Then Link's dream is your somewhat standard hero premonition, whilst the morning wake up is more of a happy little drama that immediately has you invested in Link's character and the world he is to traverse. Now, maybe you didn't get all that from that cacophony of information, but for some reason, this sequence really tugs at me. The story of this whole game does the same for me, really. I just love these cutscenes. But not as much as I love the cutscenes of Mario Power Tennis and Mario Golf Toadstool Tour. Now, these games were made alongside a company called who apparently are always making Mario Golf and Tennis games, even now. But their golden age of opening cutscenes has got to be from these two games on the GameCube. See, Camelot seems to be the biggest fanboys of Wario and Waluigi. I mean, they've got the guy holding up their logos, for goodness sake. And in both of these openings, these two are the starring role. And I mean, what can you really expect out of an opening for some random sports game? Well, Camelot goes the extra mile and basically gives us a little short movie within the Mario universe. And they work to add just so much personality into these characters. With tennis, Wario and Waluigi aren't happy that they've been eliminated from the tournament, and so, though admittedly by pure accident, they discover Bowser's underground lair where they can train to become the best of the best. And with the final match popping up, the trio crash the party and try to take it over for themselves, and bombing the whole place. Regardless, it's just a nice little piece that just breathes so much life into the characters and how they interact. And golf is similar too, with how the two are just bad at golf and then accidentally whack a distant Bowser in the eye, only to be targeted down and then eventually taken down themselves through entirely bad luck thanks to Mario. And I just can't get over the little details like the hidden little voice lines from the two of them. And we're not done there yet. Camelot has such an admiration for its characters that it even threw in bloopers for their tennis opening. Freaking bloopers! They had to do extra animation and voice acting to make all of this work. Have you heard Mario and Bowser laugh like this before? That old Super Mario Bros. 3 theory that they're all actors seems to spread even further. It's a real shame that Camelot doesn't get the budget or time to do these kind of additions nowadays. But hey, these are just little sports games, so what are you gonna do?
Don't expect mouth to mouth.
And before we hit number 1, here's some honorable mentions. Coming right off one Mario Sports game to another, it's Mario Strikers Charged. This game just screams style, and what a poignant one to go for. Seeing such an edgy rendition of the Mario world with this super fun fantasy football scenario is just so good. And if I could somehow watch this sport in real life, electric force fields and all, I'd be pretty happy. It makes watching football actually seem fun. This game was such a good game as a whole, and I can only dream of a sequel to it one day. It feels like it has some real possibilities. The opening's pretty nice too. Who needs actual storylines? Let's just play the sport. Next up is Bayonetta. Not too much for dynamic story or presentation, but just the extreme amount of choreography needed to organize this fight to perfectly represent Bayonetta as a character when introducing her to the player. Just, wow, it's so beautifully put together. You know, maybe Nintendo makes too many Mario things, or they just keep providing good openings, because now we've got Mario and Sonic at the London 2012 Olympic Games. Now the Olympic Games keep things fairly simple with their openings. It's like a real montage of just the events that take place. You've got celebrations, character representation, and what fits their personalities. Luigi on a horse, sure, father and son rowing, Peach ribbon dancing, and this great backing track through the whole thing. It's just so happy and enlightening. The visuals look great, and it looks like it's a real good time. The ending wraps up all we've seen together. It feels like there's all sorts of mini jokes and moments, like Silver winning silver, and then like almost a political moment, Mario and Sonic shaking hands on the Big Ben Tower. and we get the ever-triumphant ending with the logo. Just, mwah, what a beautiful opening. And these last two mentions I've got here are because they're not exactly Nintendo games, but they were the inspiration for this video in the first place. The first is Battleblock Theater's crazy puppetry opening. It's like a nice kid's storytelling moment, except the way it's presented and the commentary from Stamper is just so hilarious and works fantastically. I just love how it all plays out. What a masterpiece of an opener.
Boy, that was quick. And there was thunder. Boom! And the lightning. Boom!
I wish I could recreate it in real life one day. Oh well.
Waves thrashed the boats to and fro and to, carelessly sprinkling friend after friend into the cold, unforgiving abyss of the deep, dark ocean. Everyone was screaming like, "Help me!" Splash! Splash! And there was this huge whale like, "Wah!" and made it super scary. And I think there was...
But this next one is a true masterpiece. I'm still on the fence on if you can even count this as not Nintendo. It's Sonic. The game appeared on all three companies' consoles, but it seems to be in its own field of third parties something or other. It's Sonic Unleashed. Again, starting with a mini-movie, it is just the perfect homage to Sonic and how his tropes usually go. It's the big Eggman climax in space, Sonic rocks up and completely trashes all of Eggman's robots. The cinematography and choreography through all of this is immaculate, and once Sonic's in a pinch, we get the classic ending with Super Sonic coming out. Eggman flees and we get all sorts of victorious explosions and triumphant trumpets. And then we come to a proper dialogue scene, slowing things right down. And can I just say, this is everything I want to see in a Sonic movie. Just simple 3D animation covering all the basic tropes and just being a joyful homage to watch. But what I like even better than all this homage is the ending. Turns out Sonic was being tricked by another of Eggman's schemes, and it works. Eggman rips Sonic of his power, opens up some demonic thing in the earth, and turns Sonic into the Werehog, which the music for is just incredible. You should listen to it. And what happens next? Eggman wins. He opens the chute to space and Sonic is thrust down to Earth. With all hope lost, the logo pops up. Now the game begins. This is just perfect. I couldn't be more invested in finding out what happens next. If only more Sonic cutscenes could look like this and not the amputation we get from the very next scene. The whole sequence seems infallible to me and looks absolutely stunning throughout. And if I wasn't so unsure whether it counts as Nintendo or not, then it would be number one without a doubt. But it's time for the real number one. This version is the big ol' Super Mario Galaxy, and big is right. This is another one of those 5-minute sequences in different forms type of openings. We start with a gentle storybook opening of the 100-year cycle of the Star Festival before hearing a letter from Peach, all building to the events happening next. And naturally, in one of the most personality-driven moments we've ever seen from Mario in his own game, we see Mario running gleefully towards the castle, truly ecstatic to be there. Now, admittedly, we get gameplay now, but I'm counting it as part of the opening sequence because you only really walk forwards during this moment. Suddenly, this bright event is attacked by Bowser and his fleet. We get this crazy dramatic cutscene by Mario standards with projectiles falling around Mario, Toads being entrapped, and the town in general panic. We then see Peach clutching onto a Luma as Bowser's ship edges closer, the drums kicking up a storm, Bowser says his spiel, blah blah blah. He activates his plan and a giant alien ship props up in the sky. Back to Mario and we have to rush ahead to the castle as quickly as possible. What drama. Pulling back, we see the ship fire lasers around the castle before lifting it out of its foundation, throwing everyone off, even Mario. The airship begins to pull in it and they're taken far from their home. The orchestra just building even more. Peach calls out for Mario and Kamek comes in to ruin the rescue. Mario is blasted away and as he flies away we hear one final... as he blacks out as the Luma comes charging towards him. I mean, what an opener that is. Maybe I really have a thing for being blasted out into outer space, but man, what a crazy dramatic opener for another simple save the princess story. This sequence has it all. It builds up a nice event, it tarnishes it, chucks in a real sense of doom and fear, picks up the action between what's happening on a large scale and a small, and then plays with your hopes before blowing it all away again. Super Mario Galaxy has such a masterclass opening, and I am so in love with it. It is our number one spot for Nintendo's top 10 opening cutscenes. Now, these openings may be great, but we shouldn't judge games entirely on their intros. The important part is the actual meat of the game, what actually happens afterwards. Oh no. Thank you for watching, I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, consider subscribing, or even better, supporting me on Patreon, as I'm starting off this year as a small YouTuber, but my god have I been getting some traction lately. With me only doing one video each week, I have more free time to work on alternative little projects like the Biscuit Barrel one I mentioned earlier, but also some Patreon things, like a blooper montage every so often, and there's a possibility for merch and things sometime this year, something to give back to those who choose to support me beyond these simple shoutouts. But let me know your thoughts on it. Here's some links that'll be available below. If you could support us over on punkanary.com/biscuitbarrel, that would be tremendously helpful. Anyway, enough outro talk. My name's been Daz, you didn't really care, and I'll see you in a bit.